Welcome to the LSG podcast, season 2, episode 5. These episodes are racking up fast. Like ever since we brought it back, just things have been moving. Um, VGC 101, part 2. Last time, quick synopsis if you missed the first episode, we basically discussed what VGC is, how to get into it, resources to get better, touched on Dynamaxing, but felt like we should have a whole episode centered around it. Once again, I am LSG Moo. I'm the owner and founder of Last Thought Gaming. We sponsor players across Smash and Pokemon. Lou, for the two people that don't know, you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, what's up, guys? I'm Lou. I've been playing Pokemon, as I mentioned in the last episode, for about like 4 or 5 years now. I've cut a regional in like each of the last four formats that I've played in, so I have some understanding about like what's going on. I'm not just like a complete nobody. I have like some experience. I have some results. So whenever like we start talking deep about stuff that have to do with the mechanics of Pokemon, just know that like I have some experience under my belt here.
All right, like I talked about at the beginning, we're going to be talking about Dynamaxing today. We're going to get deep into the nitty gritty of first of all what it is, second how it affects the meta, how to utilize it, and how to hopefully stop it because it's not this all powerful thing. It's very impactful, but it's not the end all be all of competitive Pokemon.
Yeah, there's been like a huge debate in the community recently as well. I mean, it's been going on ever since Dynamax was introduced, right? People have been talking about, oh, is it good for competitive Pokemon? Is it bad for competitive Pokemon? That's something that we're going to get into like a little bit later in the podcast. But for now, what is Dynamax? For those of you who don't know, or like say you're new to competitive Pokemon, you haven't played it at all, Dynamax is where small Pokemon becomes big Pokemon. And it's like when you get the boosts that you get are kind of insane, and they seem like they're impossible to deal with at first because whenever a Pokemon Dynamaxes, you can choose one Pokemon over the course of the battle to Dynamax, and you can only Dynamax it for 3 turns. Over the course of these 3 turns, your Pokemon gets 2 times as bulky, so you take half as much damage as you normally would, and all of your attacks that would normally be just regular moves now become max moves. And I think there's 19 different kinds of max moves. Or is there 20? I think no, yeah, there's 19 because there's 18 different types. And so whatever type your move is, it gets boosted attack power and becomes like a special max move. So all of the electric moves that you have now become max lightning. All of the fire moves become max flare. All of the steel moves become max steel spike, so on and so forth. And they get a 1.5 times boost to their base power up to 130, unless the base power of the move is already above 130, in which case the max move is whatever that base power of that move is. And this is kind of like a really big deal, obviously, because your Pokemon is now super bulky and it's doing tons of damage. But one of the most important factors isn't necessarily the damage or how bulky your Pokemon is. It's that these max moves have extra effects to them. So the Steel max move, Max Steel Spike, raises defense. The Fire move, Max Flare, brings out the sun. The Electric one brings out electric terrain. And so for each of the different unique max moves, they all have their own unique effects that either enact the terrain on the field, weather, or boost one of the stats for both of your Pokemon or lower stats of your opposing Pokemon. So being able to correctly figure out which Pokemon you're going to Dynamax really hinges on a lot of those factors. You have to decide, oh, if boosting here is going to win me the game, or if going for max airstream, which is the best max move to get speed control, is going to help you keep up pressure and win the game. Or if you just need to avoid getting knocked out, so you need to Dynamax your Pokemon defensively. And all these things come into focus whenever you're trying to decide which Pokemon you need to Dynamax. So it seems like at first like it's just this kind of out of control mechanic, but there's like a lot of forethought and strategy that goes into trying to decide which Pokemon you're gonna want to Dynamax.
Right. And if anybody's feeling a little overwhelmed by either the different types or the terrains or anything like that, or speed control, We got a lot of episodes to go in the series, and
Yeah.
if you're coming into this like a month, 2 months from now, I'm sure we'll have an episode that's dedicated to terrains and how they affect the field and how just they affect the Pokemon that are out. Um, this podcast, we won't be getting too deep into that, focusing more on Dynamax itself. Um, so let's talk about Max Airstream for just a second, though.
Yeah.
What are some oddball Pokemon? Like, what are some Pokemon that you see that offer that move that maybe you don't expect a flying type move on?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Max Airstream is like the best max move. Just because raising speed and having a Pokemon that is like really bulky, doesn't die, and gives your team speed control is a huge deal because in doubles, speed control is probably the most important mechanic or like factor that goes into a competitive battle easily. There are very few teams over the years that have been able to succeed without any forms of speed control. They do exist. They're typically like bulky offense that can take hits and dish it out and have like really good defensive synergy and switching. But for the most part, almost every single successful team has speed control. Even the bulky teams have some forms of speed control, like Trick Room or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. That's why Max Airstream is so important. And also, real quick, I know it's hard, like especially if you're new to the game. I have to now memorize like these 18 max moves, right, and figure out what all these max moves do. And that is like probably one of the biggest problems when it comes to getting new people into Pokemon. It's that there's just this information dump immediately, like when you're trying to get into it, where it's like, oh man, there's all these moves now. I need to learn all their effects. I need to know which Pokemon learn what moves. I need to know how fast everything is. There's like this information dump at the very start of playing. That's just this hill that you have to get over. But if you just like play for a couple days on Showdown, you kind of get the feel for things a lot faster than you would think. Like it seems really daunting at first, but once you start getting into it, it really isn't that hard of a something to overcome. But yeah, as I was saying, Max Airstream, Pokemon such as Dragapult that are like Ghost and what's his other two? Dragon. Ghost
Ghost and
Dragon, there you
Dragon.
go. Almost forgot for a second, yeah. Typically, you would never expect a Pokemon like Dragapult, that's a Ghost and Dragon type, to run a move like Fly. You'd say, wow, especially in doubles, because every Pokemon runs Protect, and you can just Protect after they go up in the air for one turn.
Right.
You would ask, like, why would you ever run Fly? It makes no sense. But the reason is because Dragapult's usually almost always the fastest mon on the field. So being able to get off a fast max airstream to boost your speed to max opposing max airstreams, to also boost your partner Pokemon speed before the other Pokemon on the opposing side even get a chance to move is a huge deal in Pokemon. It's a massive deal. So being able to have that like fast max airstream just completely changes games. And max airstream being the best max move means Pokemon like Dragapult are going to run it, and it means that flying types are now incredibly common. When before, I mean, flying types are always pretty good just because they offer a really good immunity to ground, and ground's usually on a lot of teams because steel is the best type in the game, and steel's on a lot of teams. So typically when you're building a team, you have a steel type and you have like something with levitate or something that has a flying type to offer you that ground immunity.
Right.
But now that max airstream is so good, it's like you see stab max airstream Pokemon everywhere, like Togekiss. Gyarados has also been pretty decent this year. It hasn't seen much usage recently, but being able to max airstream on Gyarados off a move like Bounce is something that we've seen. And normally you'd never see a Gyarados running Bounce, like you wouldn't see Dragapult running Fly, but that's just a testament to how good max airstream really is.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the what makes a Pokemon a good candidate for Dynamax. We talked about Dragapult being running Fly, so it has access to Max Airstream, which is a great offensive ability, a great speed control option for Dragapult once it's Dynamax. But what else makes a Pokemon a good option to be your Dynamax?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends, and a lot of people have kind of adjusted to the format by building teams that have Pokemon that are flexible enough to Dynamax, or like any Pokemon that the team can Dynamax, right? So, for example, at the start of the Pokemon, or at the start of the format, a lot of people were building teams that were centered around Duraludon or were centered around Charizard. And going into games, it was kind of like, okay, either like the Charizard or the Duraludon's gonna be the main Pokemon that's gonna max here. And or people would build hard trick room teams, and almost every time Rhyperior would end up being the Pokemon that
Right.
Dynamaxes. And people would kind of build teams around certain Dynamaxing Pokemon that were good because they got really bulky, or they had like a really overpowered max move, or they just had the ability to provide speed control and do lots of damage. People would build teams around those. But as the formats developed, um, people have started to bulk down a little bit to try to employ strategies involving around wasting your opposing or your opponent's Dynamax. And then after their Dynamax is wasted, you can properly discern, okay, now this is what the tools I need to win the game now that I know their Dynamax is gone and they can't react to me. So I'm going to Dynamax now after wasting their Dynamax. Now I'm going to go ham, and now I'm going to sweep them with mine. And so, because of that kind of change in the meta, a lot of people have been opting for teams where any Pokemon can Dynamax. With that being said, certain Pokemon are better, like inherently, than others. Like Pokemon that, like Dusclops, for example, are typically never going to Dynamax, and that's because whenever you Dynamax a Pokemon, any attack that doesn't do damage automatically becomes max guard, which is like protect, but it blocks max moves. And normally max moves go through protect and still get the effect that activates and do 1/4 the amount of damage that they normally would. But with max guard, just nothing happens. And so for Dusclops, they typically only run like Nightshade, so they have a bunch of like other support moves, and it just becomes you have 3 options to click max guard. So Pokemon like Dusclops that are like support Pokemon typically aren't the ones that are going to be Dynamaxing. Typically, Pokemon that are going to be doing a lot of damage are like good candidates. And there's different kinds. Like there's balanced Pokemon that I kind of see as like Rotom or like Excadrill that are going to Dynamax in matchups where they have the advantage, or like if you need boosts or if you need rain to win. Those are the options you're going to go for. But there's also like super offensive Pokemon that like Durant, for example. Durant's a Pokemon that whenever it comes, it's almost always the Pokemon that's going to be Dynamaxing because it can get Life Orb boosts. Because you don't get any Choice Band boosts and you don't get Choice Scarf boosts whenever you Dynamax, but you do get Life Orb boosts. So people will run Life Orb on Durant, and since max moves also can't miss, people run Hustle on it, and Hustle gives it that added Choice Band. And normally you have to worry about missing because Hustle like reduces your accuracy by 20% for all your moves. But with that Hustle boost and with the max moves not missing, you get all the benefit and none of the drawback. So you can run a Pokemon like Durant that just has a Life Orb boost, it gets a Choice Band boost, and it gets a boost in power because of the max move that gets the natural boost in power up to like base 130 attack. So you can just start going crazy. You can just start going insane with Durant. And that's one of the Pokemon that's also like really changed the format as well. Like you can't run, like every team needs a fire move. And even a fire move's not enough because people will run like Togekiss and Durant so they can like use Follow Me and stuff. So you have to sometimes run, Heat Wave on Arcanine. Normally you would never run Heat Wave Arcanine. But just to deal with Durant, you're going to want to run it sometimes. So Dynamax is insane. Like I could talk about it for hours, honestly, about all the different effects that it's had. But other Pokemon that are really good to Dynamax are stuff like Togekiss, because it does get access to max Airstream. It becomes ridiculously bulky whenever you Dynamax it as well, just because Togekiss has so much natural bulk. Adding like 2 times the amount of bulk that's just absurd, right?
Right.
And you can run weakness policy on a lot of these Dynamax Pokemon as well, since you get that 2 times boost to your defenses. You can potentially use a max move that also boosts your defenses, which is why Excadrill is so good, because both of its stabs, Max Quake and Max Steel Spike, both boost its defenses. So you can run weakness policy on it. And if people want to hit you to actually do damage to you, sure, they're going to do that damage, but they also need to have a plan for next turn when you have that boost and you can start doing a bunch of damage back. And a lot of people have also employed a lot of strategies where they activate their own weakness policy through like Volt switching their own Togekiss or Shadow Sneaking their own Max Dragapult with weakness policy on them. in order to get weakness policy boosts and start going crazy. So, I mean, Dynamax has just added so many new things to Pokemon that no one's ever seen before. In a way, I think it kind of leveled the playing field for a lot of older players who maybe have been playing the game for 3-4 years, but now are having a hard time adjusting. Meanwhile, new players are able to jump in with this mechanic and are kind of starting off on, in a way, equal footing and trying to understand the depth and complexity that it can provide.
Right. When the game first came out, Dynamax was legal, but Gigantamax wasn't. A couple months in, they made select Gigantamax Pokemon legal, and now there's a whole I think it's still select, but there's a list that's pretty long.
Yeah, I think it might be all of them now at this point.
It's
I
a lot
think
of them.
when it started, I think there were a couple Gigantamax Pokemon that were legal. I think
Right.
it was like Snorlax that was legal. Pikachu was one that was legal, and I think
Charizard, but no.
Butterfree.
Charizard was
Um,
legal, but not with solar whatever.
yeah, you could have Gigantamax Charizard, but you couldn't have it with solar power. Yeah.
But
So
what are some of the key differences between Gigantamax versus Dynamax?
yeah, Gigantamax is basically it's kind of the same thing as Dynamax, except the Pokemon has a unique move that it can use when it Dynamaxes called a Max move, or not Max move, G Max move. There it is. So like you know how you have all those Max moves that take effect and they have extra effects as well. Like Charizard would use Max Flare. Max Flare sets up the sun. That's how Dynamax Charizard's fire moves come off.
Right.
But if you're a Gigantamax Charizard, you don't get to use Max Flare. Instead, you use Max Wildfire. And if you're Snorlax, instead of using Max Strike as the normal move, you use G Max Replenish. So whatever like the main type of that Gigantamax Pokemon is, instead of having the normal Max move for that type of move, they now have their signature Max move. And the signature Max moves, a lot of them aren't very good.
Right.
For the most part. Like there are a lot of Pokemon that are actually better running the Dynamax version of their form than the Gigantamax version. Pokemon like Corviknight come to mind because um, Corviknight loses Max Airstream whenever it gets the Gigantamax form. And as we said earlier, Max Airstream is the best Max move, right? Um, However, there are Max. Oh, Duraludon's another one that its Gigantamax form is worse than its Dynamax form because it loses Max Steel Spike, so it can't boost its defense anymore. Meanwhile, its Max move, I think, lowers the opponent's PP more. So like PP is usually not that big of a deal, right? Like it's not really that good of a Max move. However, there are Pokemon that are viable. Not so, yeah, there actually are Pokemon that are viable completely because of their Gigantamax
This
move or their
one.
G-Max move, which is Pikachu. Pikachu is one that you'd never expect Pikachu to be used in VGC, right? But at the start of the format, people were using Pikachu because with Light Ball, it could Oko Togekiss. People were having trouble Okoing Togekiss at the start, and there really aren't that many good electric types. So people were like, oh, we can use Pikachu. And Pikachu's G-Max move paralyzes both Pokemon on the other side of the field. So if you do the math, let's say like both your Pokemon get paralyzed, that's a 25% chance to full para. Over the course of like 2 or 3 turns, we're well over 50% at that point for at least one full para to come off. And then on that team that had G-Max Pikachu, people would also run Excadrill and Tyranitar as sand mode with double Rock Slide. So like if you're paralyzed to getting hit by 2 Rock Slides, just give up. You're not
Right.
moving. You're you're getting full parrot. So it's cool how people like could find a way to make Pikachu work. I think the best Max or Gigantamax Pokemon is easily Charizard because it enacts Wildfire, which means for 4 turns, the opposing Pokemon take 1/6 damage. So I've been experimenting a lot recently with Charizard and trying to build, bulky teams or that can enact Wildfire and also enact Sand with like Tyranitar, and then kind of just wait and play a passive game and let the damage do the work for you while you say like try to pick up an early KO with Charizard's like massive special attack, right? Try to pick up an early KO, get like a 3 to 4 Pokemon advantage, 4 to 3 Pokemon advantage, then kind of like play passively, stall out their Dynamax, let Wildfire and Sand damage rack up. Because I mean, after like 3 turns of something in the back taking Wildfire, that's literally half health.
Right.
Then you add the 6 or 8%. I think it's 6%. I don't know. I can't remember exactly, but the Sand Chip as well, that racks up as well. So there's so many different strategies that the unique max moves can also let you play with that normally you wouldn't be able to have. So I think Gmax is like really, really cool. It's something that I'm happy they added to the game, even though a lot of people at the start of the format were complaining about Gmax being overpowered. But in actuality, I mean, it's really no more or less overpowered than Dynamax at the end of the day. It just offers a different way to approach games.
A unique option and more things to memorize.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Pokemon that I put on the graphic for this week's episode.
Oh.
Pokemon we talk about every single episode. My personal favorite
No.
Gigantamax Pokemon, Butterfree. So,
All right.
since you love Butterfree so much, why don't you first explain what makes this Pokemon a menace and why it's a complete utter gimmick, but it's valuable?
I think I would actually say Butterfree isn't like necessarily a gimmick. I think it's viable and it's like an actual strategy you can use. Unfortunately, all right. So the way it works is Butterfree is typically used as just support redirection on a lot of teams, either with like a big heavy hitter that you want to like just spam Sleep Powder next to or Rage Powder next to let it get off a lot of attacks. Or you want to use it on a Trick Room team to help you get up Trick Room. Basically, Butterfree facilitates other Pokemon. It's common to have like Butterfree Dragapult or like Butterfree Charizard. That way you can also max Airstream and then boost your Butterfree speed, then get off like a fast Sleep Powder. And it's also, again, common, as I said earlier, to just Rage Powder to set up Trick Room or use Sleep Powder on something to help set up Trick Room. So that's typically what it's used for. However, if you're facing a team where you realize, oh, wow, I have no matchup here, it's very difficult for me to win, you can employ the Gigantamaxing, the Butterfree strategy. Now, Butterfree has a unique max move called G-Max Befuddle. What it does is once you hit the opposing side, there is a 1/3 chance for sleep, a 1/3 chance of poison, and a 1/3 chance of paralysis to enact on each Pokemon on your opponent's team. So no matter what, they're getting a status, and they have a 1/3 chance of sleep, 1/3 chance of para, 1/3 chance of poison. And so if you have a really bad matchup, you know what? I'm going to roll for it. I'm just going to throw out Butterfree. I'm going to throw out something that can maybe make use of some sleep turns. And I'm just going to roll for some sleep turns and hope I just hit double sleep and just see if I can steamroll the match from there. And it's brutal, especially if someone tries to Dynamax their Pokemon in order to counter what's next to the Butterfree. Because normally you assume they're going to go for Rage Powder, or they're going to go for this like kind of support option on the Butterfree. So if you Dynamax to kind of try to match the Pokemon you think is going to Dynamax next to the Butterfree, and then the Butterfree Dynamaxes, and then Max Befuddles, and then rolls Sleep on your Dynamax Pokemon, then you could have just wasted your Dynamax for the whole game. I mean, it's insane. It's an actual strategy. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a gimmick, because I typically define a gimmick as something that only works in a best of one setting, or only works as long as your opponent doesn't know that it's there, right? That's typically how a lot of people want to define a gimmick. So by that definition, I don't think it's actually a gimmick. It's a legitimate strategy, but it's just degenerate. it's just so hard to face off against too, because of the mix-up, right? The mix-up can just catch you off guard, and a matchup that you think is in your favor in one turn with some bad RNG can all of a sudden turn into a loss.
Right. We're gonna have some dedicated episodes of this in the next couple of weeks. But what are some Pokemon that complement Butterfree well? Like, if you want to build a team around G-Max Butterfree, what are some Pokemon that you're going to choose to go with it? Are you going to have another option for Dynamax in case, like, if you do get a good advantage, a good offensive Dynamax option, and then kind of use the Butterfree as a second option to Gmax?
Yeah, I think there's a team at the start of the format that ended up getting top 8 at the first regional we went to. Um, and it was a hybrid trick room team with Butterfree on it, so they could have like Butterfree, Dusclops, Rhyperior, so they could use Rage Powder to try to set up trick room with Rhyperior, or set up trick room with Dusclops. So you could leave Butterfree, Dusclops, Rage Powder, trick room. Butterfree, since it's so frail, it's typically going to go down and give you that free switch into Rhyperior. Then you can bulldoze, activate your own Rhyperior's weakness policy, and just start going crazy, right? So that's like one of the really common setups with Butterfree. The other one, but the Pokemon you used it next to in a non-tricker mode was Charizard. Because Charizard has max Airstream, you can like max Airstream to outspeed a lot of Pokemon that normally beat Butterfree shenanigans by going for Safeguard, um, like Arcanine and stuff like that. Some Togekiss do it, but Butterfree's typically going to be outspeeding Togekiss if the Togekiss is running Safeguard. But it's mainly for like Safeguard, Arcanine, and stuff like that. You could get off a fast max Airstream, um, and facilitates just rampant sleep powders. And what's cool is whenever you have a Dynamax Pokemon that's doing a lot of damage, having something next to it that has the option to go for sleep or go for Rage Powder is a big deal. So Charizard was really good with Butterfree. And I think there's another Pokemon, I'm having trouble remembering it. It's also just like broken with even like Gmax Butterfree. If you just want to go for the straight Gmax and just roll for sleep and stuff like that. I think Togekiss actually. Togekiss is also like Togekiss Butterfree. It sounds weird having two flying types with a lot of the same weaknesses out there on the same team. But you have that same dynamic where you can Airstream, get some speed control, start spamming sleep powders. Or if you have like a really offensive Togekiss, you can Dynamax the Togekiss, use Rage Powder on the Butterfree to like go for some damage. Or you can use Follow Me on the Togekiss as you end up Dynamaxing the Butterfree to roll for turns as well. It's probably better like if you run a scope lens Togekiss, if you're doing that. I think there was a team I made where I would go like Butterfree Togekiss, and based off of the leads, you could kind of decide, okay, which Pokemon is the one I'm going to want to Dynamax in this spot. So I think like Togekiss is a good partner for Butterfree, as odd enough as it seems, right? Because it seems they have the same typing, so they wouldn't be that good. Trick Room modes are great with Butterfree, and stuff like either Charizard or Dragapult would also be really good partners.
All right. What are some other, just going back to vanilla Dynamax and kind of taking a step back here a little bit, what are some other common strategies you see using Dynamax? What are some ones that you'd recommend people familiarize themselves with as far as using their
Yeah.
Dynamax goes?
Yeah, I brought it up earlier. I mentioned Durant and how Durant is just absolutely broken because of hustle. It gets the built-in choice band boost, it gets the life orb boost, it gets the boost to its move's base power because of max moves. The other thing about Durant that's also really cool is it gets two moves that boost its defenses. Like you can use Max Steel Spike for stab, or you can use Max Flutterby for stab, or Max Flutterby, which is the bug max move, which lowers special attack. Meanwhile, Max Steel Spike raises your defense. So you can actually kind of like build like a bulkier Durant set if you want. Life Orb is also really good, but you can like maybe invest some EVs to level some attacks you normally wouldn't be able to after you boost your defenses one stage. So Durant's like really good, like incredibly good. Togekiss is another absolute monster, as I mentioned earlier, again, because of like that max Airstream threat. And Togekiss also is weird because you can run like 4 different items on it that are all broken. Like you can run the weakness policy and self-activate your own weakness policy with like Volt Switch or Bullet Punch or something like that, or just allow your opponent to activate your own weakness policy since you do a lot of damage and you're super bulky, and the only way to really hit Togekiss is with super effective damage. So the only way they can damage you is if they also boost your attack. So you can just get like a lot of pins like that in general with Togekiss. Tyranitar also functions the same way, where when it Dynamaxes, it gets that health boost, it gets the special defense boost because of sand. So it's just ridiculously bulky. The only way you can hit it is for super effective, and then it just does tons of damage back. It can also like boost its attack with Max Knuckle. It can reset up Sand with Max Rockfall. So typically, like almost every single team has to run a fighting type or some sort of like strong fighting move to deal with Tyranitar. Just because Tyranitar is insanely bulky, and if you're not ready for it, it's just going to steamroll you. And if you don't run like a fighting move or like a fighting type, then you have to have Intimidate or like Will-O-Wisp in order to deal with Tyranitar. Otherwise, it goes crazy. But yeah, Togekiss, as I was saying, it runs like Weakness Policy. It can run Scope Lens, which is kind of the most degenerate strategy in this format, but it's actually really good because with Super Luck and with Scope Lens, you have a 50% chance to get a critical hit. So these Arcanines that snarl your Togekiss and these Grimmsnarl that set up Light Screen, you have a 50% chance just to crit through it, and you can OHKO Arcanine with a crit max Airstream, even after it snarls you. So that's the thing about like weakness policy Togekiss. If they just snarl you and don't give you your weakness policy, oh, that's too bad. I'm not going to get my boosts. But with Scope Lens, it doesn't matter how they try to stop you. You're going to be going big no matter what. And over the course of 3 turns of Dynamax, you're probably getting at least 1 critical hit, odds are.
Right.
The other option that people run on Togekiss, the other 2 are like on more bulkier variants that don't always Dynamax, but have the option to. Sometimes they run the Berry, so they can take Steel-type attacks from stuff like Excadrill and Durant and Duraludon, which are all like 3 really common Pokemon. So it can get off like Yawns and stuff like that. Because Yawn is... You'd never think Yawn's a good VGC move, but Sleep is just really good at beating Dynamax. So a lot of Pokemon, even like Gastrodon and stuff, are starting to run Yawn that never were before.
Musharna's going to make a comeback.
Musharna, oh man, dude, I don't think Musharna's bad.
I want the Yawn Dream Eater Musharna. Come on.
Yawn Dream Eater. There's worse sets I've seen that have had success. I'll just say that.
Speaking of, so we talked about Max Airstream a lot.
Yeah.
In Dragapult specifically, running Max Airstream. So another good Dragapult option is Max Phantasm. So
yeah,
Max Phantasm lowers the physical defense of whatever it hits.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you just squeeze in an Excadrill or any other physical attacker, and all of a sudden you got yet another OHKO threat.
Yeah, that's also one of the other reasons why Max Dragapult's kind of broken. Not broken, but like incredibly meta defining. One also because it's a physical. It can be physical or special. There's a time period at the start of the format everyone was physical. Then people started running a lot of special Dragapult, but now it's back to everyone running more physical just because we realized. Yeah, we realized like how good Max Airstream is too. Like we realized that okay, yeah, I want to be running Max Airstream. I want to be hitting things hard, and I want to be going fast when I do it. But the other thing is that Dragapult gets clear body, so it can't be intimidated, which is kind of broken. It's super fast. It can't be intimidated, and it can snowball Max Phantasm defense drops. And so a lot of times, okay, you think what beats like dragon types, you think fairy types, right? But whenever you throw a little Excadrill next to your Dragapult, all of a sudden it's a completely different story because now you can use Max Phantasm, you can snowball those defense drops so your next Max Phantasm does tons of damage. And if you have an Excadrill out that hits physically and hits really hard, you can use stab steel moves to hit fairy types that normally beat your Dragapult. And they're also going to have lower defense, so it just turns into OHKO machines. And that's kind of what the main like 3 core Pokemon of the format kind of evolved into. It's called TED, Togekiss, Excadrill, Dragapult. Because Steel Dragon Fairy has been a VGC core that's been a staple since the Fairy type was introduced.
Right.
Just because they cover each other really, really well. With, Steel resisting Fairy that Dragon is weak to. Steel being immune to poison that Fairy is weak to. And they just have like really good synergy together. And so that core has always kind of existed. But it with these 3 Pokemon with TED, it's kind of been taken to a new level just because Togekiss and Excadrill have ridiculous synergy. Like, it's insanely it's just stupid, kind of, really. Because not only can you go for like follow me on Togekiss and sword stance on Excadrill to get off like a sword stance and then start going insane. You can also choose Dynamax Togekiss. Like in any given battle, you can choose to Dynamax one of these three Pokemon to great effect. While the other one, not Dynamax, can still put in a lot of work. And the type synergy is broken because what hits Togekiss for super effective damage? We're talking about electric moves and poison moves and rock moves, while Excadrill is immune to electric and poison. Immune to it. And it resists rock moves. Meanwhile, on the other side, what hits Excadrill for like a lot of damage? Like we're talking fire, we're talking water, which Dragapult resists, ground type moves, which Togekiss is immune to. So like the synergy between these three Pokemon is insane. Either any of them can Dynamax, and you can go for like follow me boosting schemes. And two of them with Dragapult and Togekiss also have access to max Airstream. So it's insane like how solid those three Pokemon work together.
So, how do you stop it? You see a team running those three. Any is a viable Dynamax option. We talked about how neither of us are of the camp where we think Dynamax is broken, but we just spent roughly 35 minutes hyping up how good Dynamax is.
Yeah, how insane it
So
is.
what's the balancing factor? How do you approach it defensively? How do you react to it?
I think that VGC might be better without Dynamax, personally, because I've played some doubles OU, and doubles OU without Dynamax seems like really, really fun. But with that being said, Dynamax isn't VGC, and it's not. I feel like a lot of players see Dynamax and they just think like, oh, format's bad because of it. And I don't necessarily think that's true. Because there's a lot of effective ways to actually like stop Dynamax. I feel like a lot of VGC players are kind of locking themselves in a box about how to approach the format right now. I think as what happens often in a lot of formats, once the meta kind of fizzles down a bit, there's like a couple months where players get kind of what's the word? They get a little passive and not creative in their team building, and they stop looking for ways to break the format open, and instead they start engaging in matchup roulette. Like they take like a lot of the common teams and they try to decide, okay, which of these common teams should I run for this tournament based off of what's more popular, instead of trying and innovate a bit. And I think we're in that stage of meta development right now. And I think part of that is because players feel disillusioned by Dynamax instead of continuing to try to push it to its maximum capability. And part of pushing Dynamax to its maximum extent is figuring out how to stop it, because one of the main problems with Dynamax is trying to decide which Pokemon on your opponent's team is the one that is going to Dynamax. And if you're not playing that game right, then you get stuck in mind games where you have to make game deciding decisions about which Pokemon they Dynamax. Meanwhile, if you build like a lot more bulkier defensive teams, you can wait, react, see which one they Dynamax, use some double protects, use some defensive switching, use some redirection and try to stall it, and then sweep with your own. And I think that that's something that even a lot of really good VGC players haven't figured out about the most consistent way to play the format. I think a lot of players still are stuck in this loop where they're this what's the correct term for it? There's like a definition for it. Circular reasoning, right? Where and circular reasoning is a huge problem in VGC that causes people to quit because they can't get over it. And what I mean by circular reasoning is, say you're in a position where you know everything that your opponent can do, and your opponent knows everything that you can do. If you know everything about the board, which a lot of like top VGC players often find themselves in positions, right? Like they both know everyone's options that are on the field. How do you decide what to do? Because you could do this option, but they could do this to stop that. But if they do that to stop that, then you should do this to stop. But if you should do this to stop it, then they have this to stop that, right? So it creates this loop, this infinite loop of decision making, where it seems like there's no optimal choice to make. But the way you avoid like getting into that loop is by doing moves a certain percent of the time and building teams that are designed to break those loops through like bulk and through options like redirection. And that's probably the main way to beat Dynamax right now that people are leaning into. Like Togekiss is on almost every single team. If it's not, then Indeedee on that team. Like almost every team has a form of redirection. And that's because when you have those 3 turns of Dynamax, in theory, first turn of their Dynamax, you could double protect to maybe scout which Pokemon they're going to Dynamax.
Right.
The turn after that, you can follow me to waste one of their max moves, waste one of their Dynamax turns. Then after that, you can double protect again. And now their Dynamax is gone, and now it's your turn, right? So now you can unleash your Dynamax, and you know that there's nothing they can do to stop it. Another thing you can do is Dynamaxing the Pokemon you want to Dynamax on the last turn of their Dynamax, because it gives you that boost to your health, and you can use so you can like take their max move, target down a Pokemon next to their Dynamax Pokemon to try to get rid of it, and then their Dynamax is gone, and then you can start going after it. So you don't always have to like double protect at the end. Depending on the board position, you can kind of stagger it. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of Pokemon are starting to run Yawn now, because if a Pokemon Dynamaxes and you Yawn that Dynamax Pokemon, then they're now forced with having to switch out to save it and waste their Dynamax, or go for another max move, another big attack, and just go to sleep and then have to suffer a few sleep turns. So Yawn's been a really interesting and creative way that people have started to endorse, and people have gone even more degenerate now. Since Clefairy now gets Friend Guard and it didn't earlier in the format, a lot of people are starting to use Clefairy, and people are running Sing. People are legit just running Sing Clefairy because they don't know another good 4th move, and it's just a 50-50 sleep something. So they're like, screw it, we'll take it. We'll just run like Protect, Follow Me, Helping Hand, Sing, and we'll just run that set, and we'll just go for it. It's insane. It's insane, like the stuff that people are doing.
See, the first team I ever ran on ladder had that Dream Eater Yawn Musharna I was joking around about. Like I legit ran that, and I was yawning D-Max because I didn't know how to deal with it. Like I didn't know what other option, and so I just roll for the sleep. Like you said, it changes momentum so fast that it makes what's otherwise like a laughable meme option into like a legit strategical choice.
Yeah, and there's one more Pokemon I want to discuss about stopping Dynamax that I think is really big and really interesting right now. And it's I don't know. I just love how the meta's played out. And that Pokemon is Arcanine, because Arcanine is one of the best defensive Pokemon in VGC. It's incredible what it can do, because it can Will-O-Wisp things, it can intimidate things, and it can snarl things. So Arcanine, and it can be like made faster. Some can run Choice Band, even some run like bulkier Arcanines, and that's also like an incredible way to stop Dynamax as well. When you go for snarls, so like say something Dynamaxes, you hit it with a snarl. Oh wow, now my stats are lowered for my entire Dynamax. Same with the Will-O-Wisp. Oh, now my attack is cut in half. And Arcanine's cool because it can Will-O-Wisp things and it can snarl things. So you can deal with whatever opposing Dynamax your opponent has with whichever neutering option is available to you. And normally you'd say, wait a minute, hold up. Isn't Incineroar legal? Isn't Incineroar just way better at that job than Arcanine is? And it also gets Fake Out, and it gets Parting Shot while also having Intimidate. However, Arcanine is fast, and the speed tiers are a huge, huge deal, because Incineroar doesn't outspeed Duraludon, it doesn't outspeed Excadrill, it doesn't outspeed Togekiss, it doesn't outspeed a lot of things. Right. Meanwhile, Arcanine outspeeds almost a great majority of the format. The only things that are kind of relevant that Arcanine doesn't outspeed are stuff like Dragapult, Inteleon, Charizard,
The stuff
Durant.
that no one outspeeds.
Yeah, basically the super fast Pokemon. But other than that, Arcanine outspeeds everything, and it gets the chance to lower their attack with Intimidate and then snarl them or burn them before Incineroar would have the ability to. And in addition, Fake Out's still obviously amazing, right? It's always going to be a great move in VGC. But since Dynamax Pokemon can't get flinched by Rock Slide or by Fake Out, it's a little bit less effective than you would expect it to be. And there's some stats that came out yesterday that actually showed Arcanine at a higher usage than Incineroar, which I just love to see, because whenever Incineroar was announced to be legal, everyone lost their minds. It was insane.
Right.
People were like, if you guys follow Wolfie, well, if you're listening to this, you probably follow Wolfie, obviously. But yeah, he was like talking about how it's going to be so bad for the format that everyone's going to be using Incineroar. He has his like ban Incineroar merch and stuff like that. And now Incineroar's not even better than Arcanine. So I just love how Arcanine was able to kind of hold its own in this format. And I would love to say I saw it coming. I would love to say that I thought I didn't think Incineroar would be on like almost every team, but I did. I thought Incineroar would be like super overpowered as well. I think the only person who really I thought that on certain teams that were like specifically weak to Duraludon, Arcanine would be better because it can obviously deal with Duraludon better. And I thought like Arcanine would still be used and it would still have its niche, right? And that's what its niche would kind of be. But I didn't expect it to have more higher usage than Incineroar. Not at all. I think the only person who saw this coming was Sejan. I think Sejan tweeted out that he thought Arcanine was still going to be better than Incin, which is kind of an insane prediction, but I mean,
Right.
he nailed it.
So, overall, do you think that Dynamax is healthy for DGC? Would you rather have Z moves back or Mega Evolutions?
I think Mega Evolution is a lot healthier for VGC than Dynamax is, just because, as I said, there are a lot of ways to reduce variance in Dynamax, right? It's what we kind of just went over. And there's a lot of top players in VGC who still are kind of throwing their hands up in the air instead of trying to innovate ways to continuously stop this this variance that Dynamax can provide. But however many ways you have to reduce the variance that Dynamax brings, it still introduces it at the end of the day, right? It still brings it, which is, and a lot of times people say, oh, I love having like variance Pokemon. I love having a lot of Pokemon being able to be used. But that's not what I mean when I say variance. What I mean by variance is like over the course of a battle, the format is volatile in a way where the amount of turns that a game goes on, an amount of impactful turns, are significantly less than without a certain mechanic. I know that's probably really confusing for a lot of new players to try to understand, and I know that even for old players, I phrased that so horribly. So even for old players, you probably have no idea what I just said. So let me try to phrase it a little better, right? I view variance in Pokemon as let me go with an analogy, right? Over the course of a Pokemon battle, say there's 8 turns in a battle. Over the course of those 8 turns, maybe 1 or 2 of them, even 2 of them is a lot, probably only 1 of them, there should be a decision where getting it right wins you the game and getting it wrong loses you the game. So whenever I'm talking about variance, I'm talking about the amount of turns where getting one play wrong or one decision wrong can lose you the game. Yeah, cost you the game. I guess maybe a better word than variance in that regard is volatility. That's the word I'm looking for, which is why I was having a hard time describing it. But that volatility increases the variance factor in Pokemon, obviously. Mm-hmm. Because the proper way to like play Pokemon is you can't necessarily make the exact same play every single time, right? Or else you're going to get red, you're going to lose games. You have to mix it up with different plays so that you don't get hard red, and that and to keep your opponent on your toes. So you have to mix up the plays you make. However, if even while you're mixing up the plays you make, if while you're doing your mix-ups, there's plays that can be made by your opponent on a continuous basis that can just lose you the game based off of one turn, then even if you're the better player for like 5 or 6 turns and you make plays that like steadily gain you momentum, that one play can completely ruin a game. And I think that that's the problem with Dynamax, that it adds that volatility, which leads to a lot more variance. Because any Pokemon can Dynamax, sure, and that causes a lot of problems. But also, the after effects of the Dynamax moves can kind of take it to a new level. Because there can be win cons where, oh, I just need my Recover Gastrodon to get a bunch of special defense boosts or defense boosts, and now there's no way for him to break through my Gastrodon. That's like a perfectly viable win con you can go for. Or you could go for like a more offensive win con where like you want to get off like a few max knuckles with your Tyranitar, and that's how you're going to do it. So you could have like, say, Excadrill Tyranitar out, and you can like switch to Gastrodon and then go for those defense boosts to go for like a Gastrodon-centric strategy. Or you could have Tyranitar out and switch to like something like Togekiss and go for Max Knuckle, and then start going for redirection, have Tyranitar start going crazy. Like it introduces such a wide range of plays that, and sometimes it's impossible to cover all of them. Like sometimes you do just have to go with just like a read on what your opponent is going to do, and sometimes your opponent is forced to go for a hard read about what you're going to do. And Dynamax is, and the variance and volatility that Dynamax brings is what's forcing players to have to go for those hard reads, because you can only cover one option by doing one thing, and you can only cover this other option by doing this one specific thing. So you end up locked into situations where you have to make specific plays. And Dynamax is what's doing that in this format. As I said, I've played some doubles OU where Dynamax is banned, and there's a lot less of that volatility of plays where you're forced and shoehorned into making a specific play to counteract another specific play. And it kind of reminds me a lot of GS Cup formats where you have like Xerneas and where you have like Primal Groudon and stuff. A lot of times you get fake out pressure and you can like fake out this Xerneas and do a bunch of damage to it. Whoever that Xerneas can protect, in which case you need to fake out the other Pokemon, in which case if the Xerneas just attacks, you lose. And a lot of times it's kind of like you just have to nail like which if the Xerneas protects or not. And that's what the game's going to come down to. Or you need to nail if the Xerneas is going to protect and switch to Incineroar to get Intimidate and Fake Out. Sometimes you just need to nail that read. And there's like a specific play you have to make to stop that play to win, and a specific play you have to make if they don't go for that play that you make that you have to win. And I think that's the problem with Dynamax. In Mega Evolution, you never really had that issue,
right?
Because you always knew what was going to Mega Evolve. You never had a problem with discerning what was going to Mega. I mean, sometimes people ran dual Mega teams, but in the matchup, like, it's kind of very clear what Mega Pokemon was going to be coming. And a lot of times in Dynamax and VGC, it is clear what Pokemon they're going to Dynamax. Probably like a little more than 50% of the time, I'd say, you can kind of properly discern, even from Team Preview, or not necessarily Team Preview, but from the leads, like which Pokemon they have in the back, which Pokemon they're probably going to want to Dynamax. You can figure that stuff out like a decent amount of the time, to the point where the format's not super cancerous, right? And it's not a terrible form. But the amount of times that it does happen is still just kind of a problem. It really is kind of an issue still.
I just want to see my boy Mega Beedrill be viable.
Mega Beedrill. There was one of my friends, Alan, who I think he cut a I don't know if he cut a regional. He definitely got like top 16, I think, with Mega Beedrill last year. Because, I mean, adaptability, like Poison Jab.
He's so fast.
It's fast. Adaptability is no joke. It is not. It could OHKO like Tapu Fini, I'm pretty sure. It could smack Xerneas as well. I don't know if it got the OHKO on Xerneas. I think it might get an OHKO on the no bulk Xerneas. So if you're just max speed, max special attack, I
Right.
think it gets the Oko. But I don't think it did against the more bulky ones. But it could also hit like stuff like Cresselia and stuff like that.
See, there's a theme
And
here. I just like big bugs. Clearly,
yeah,
Butterfree,
Butterfree, Beedrill.
Beedrill.
What are your thoughts on Mega Pinsir or not Mega Pinsir? Mega Heracross.
I don't really have thoughts because I don't know anything about it really. Like I was so uninvolved. The only reason I know anything about Mega Beedrill is because of Let's Go. In Let's
Let's
Go,
go.
it
Yeah,
was like meta defining because everybody ran Mega Mewtwo. And Mega
yeah.
Beedrill beats Mega Mewtwo. Like just straight up. It's just a win button. So you used to go online and bully 10-year-olds with Mega Beedrill.
We just spam Mewtwo. Dude, yeah,
Exactly.
I kind of miss Mega Evolution. I'm not gonna lie. I think here's the thing: Dynamax has problems, but I feel like a lot of the problems about Dynamax could be fixed. Like, I don't think the solution is just like ban Dynamax and get rid of Dynamax because it does add like a cool element and a cool depth to VGC.
Mm-hmm.
I think getting rid of the volatility is of Dynamax is the optimal solution. So just getting rid of it altogether. And I think the way to do that is make it so that you can't have like a boosting item on your on like a Dynamax Pokemon, or you can have a boosting item, but when you Dynamax, it loses the effect. So no Life Orb boost to your Dynamax Pokemon because that just makes your max moves ridiculously powerful, and it's really annoying, and it's really restrictive and limited in the options that you can use to stop like Life Orb Dynamax Pokemon like Dragapult and like Durant. It really restricts a lot of their calcs. So if Life Orb would be gone, it'd be better. And the biggest one is weakness policy. Because having a Pokemon that can boost its defenses with max moves, can boost its speed, and also the only way to really hit it to do a lot of damage is with super effective moves. But if you do that, then it gets super strong. That's incredibly toxic. And there's also a lot of self-proccing weakness policy that's toxic as well. And it just makes game plans in games so linear, which is the problem. Like
Right.
you're forced to have to deal with this threat, and you're forced to make certain plays to deal with this threat. And anytime in Pokemon, you're forced to make certain plays from early on in games. I don't know. It just feels like the game isn't being played to its maximum potential, right? I feel like Pokemon at its best is a game where you're making moves that affect the board slowly over the course of multiple turns where you're like fighting for position, which results in the player who makes the better plays positionally winning more of the time. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the when Pokemon's at its best. And I know a lot of spectators maybe not like won't like that. Like maybe a lot of spectators want to see a lot of Pokemon get KO'd. They
Just
want to see these
vicious
hyper
Ren
offense
every game.
matchups. Yeah, these vicious Wrens bodying things. Like maybe that's what the spectators want to see. And you know what? If that's what you want to see, it's what you want to see. But as a player, it's hard to want that level of volatility in a game that you're playing competitively and putting a lot of time and effort into getting better at as well.
Right. One thing I will say about this, I think a lot of the issues with Dynamax come from the state of the meta itself. So every competitive title under the sun, except for CSGO, and I'll get into why in just a second, but every single competitive title in the youth of its meta is super volatile. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with examples, but in StarCraft 2, when it first came out, you saw a lot of people just doing all-in builds just because that was what was familiar, that was what was comfortable. And patches kind of helped shift the meta away from that, but more than that, people understanding defensive options shifted the meta away from it. And League of Legends saw a lot of volatility in its early meta with the various cycles that the roles went through, etc. CS:GO didn't really go through it because there was Counter Strike Source before it in 1.6, and the game wasn't significantly enough different to alter the meta in the way like those other two titles did. Even in
Mm-hmm.
Smash, you see a lot of like in early meta, you see a lot of characters dominant that are simple to understand, just because they're simple. You don't have to put as much
Yeah,
time. That's the reason
yeah.
you see tier lists now compared to tier lists when Ultimate first came out. Um, as games mature, as metas develop, as metas shift, the mindset shifts and the appropriate counters shift. Things that are like right now, things that are good are probably going to always be good. But if the accepted playstyle counters what's perceived as good now, then it brings up other topics or other strategies rise that aren't perceived as good now. So I think as the meta matures, as the game matures, even with or without patches, which Pokemon Company has been kind of questionable patches in my opinion. Like I see a lot of their decisions, and you just froze. You froze.
If their decisions are atrocious.
You're right. So I don't think we can rely on patches to fix the Dynamax thing, but what I will say is I think as the meta shifts and as people become more acclimated to the climate, that you'll see Dynamax become less volatile naturally as the meta progresses. It might become a little stale or a little boring, a little less exciting, but I don't think that the volatility will be present in 6 months to a year from now.
Yeah, that's actually something that's kind of we've seen throughout the history of VGC. Like whenever formats start in VGC, a lot of times what dominates is the super offensive strategies. Like the most broken, the most strong, the most powerful, fast Pokemon are typically what run early meta. And then people obviously they come up with those defensive solutions to it. And then the meta evolves based off of those defensive solutions as different offensive solutions come out to those, then new defensive solutions come out to those. And that's kind of like how the meta develops in Pokemon. So it's actually like really similar. And we already have, I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we have started to see a lot of teams bulk down now and try to employ that strategy of wasting the opposing Dynamax and then Dynamaxing for yourself late game. That's a strategy we've seen come up. So yeah, that's definitely something that reigns true in Pokemon as well.
Right. I definitely I feel like the mind what's happening now will cause another shift, and that snowballs into the eventuality of the loss of volatility. It's metas are patterns. Every single game, like the meta shifts in patterns because when it all boils down to it, everything's rock paper scissors. Like I might be a bad analogy, but I think that everything is rock paper scissors in the fact that everything has stuff that counters it and stuff that counters that. And so when the meta shifts to something that's countered by something else, it leads to the meta shifting to what counters that, and then what counters that is discovered, and it leads to this pattern of you're not so much playing the game as you're playing the people and you're playing the mindset around the game.
Yeah, I think in Pokemon, what makes that kind of school of thought a little less detrimental, right, is team choice. Because you can in team building in general, which is why I think Pokemon is such a unique game, and that there's no other game like Pokemon. Is that you can team build specifically against the meta. You can come out with something that's innovative that breaks it open that no one has ever seen before. Like we've seen multiple world champions like build teams that just were absolutely insane, and some that even weren't insane. Like I think a cool example is in last year, 2019, in Ultra Series. The same six that won Worlds were the same six that I brought to the first regional of 2016. I used the exact same six that won Worlds, but only I think actually only one item was the same on our teams. We had like none of the same EV spreads. We had maybe one item that was the same, and just because of that, the teams played completely different.
Right.
So Pokemon is like so layered in how a meta develops that like it's not just like, oh, what Pokemon are you going to use? It's really how you're using them that also has such a massive impact, and how you build them, and then that affects how you use them. And I think no other game comes close to emulating that type of complexity that Pokemon has, and that kind of diversity within like specific Pokemon. Which is why whenever people complain about, oh, everyone's using the same Pokemon, this format stinks, there's no diversity. I always feel like, no, there's tons of diversity. It's just that it's hard for you to see it if you're not like competitive player. Because
Right.
you can look at two Pokemon on like the same teams and think like, oh wow, it's the same, it's so stale. But the builds of those Pokemon can be like completely different and be insanely creative. Some of the most creative stuff we've ever seen. But it's just hard to see that when you just like see a lot of the, or when you're not engrossed into like the culture of the game and only kind of see stuff at the surface level.
Right. We talked about a last episode about the inherent depth that there is to Pokemon and how minuscule things can make that complexity just erupt. Like EV
Yeah,
spreads, move selection. You talked about seeing on Clefairy. Like
yeah.
you
Move
can,
selection big.
from a beginner's point of view, and like when I was first learning about competitive Pokemon, I fell into this trap too. It was like you look at two Pokemon that are the same type, and you're like, it's hard to understand why one's competitively viable and the other is not. And then as you dig, you find all these little intricacies between them that really differentiate Pokemon from each other, and that just it becomes expanded upon when you introduce items, move selection,
Yeah.
Dynamax, EVs. It's just Pokemon is insanely in depth, which is one of the reasons we started this series. Going into next episode of this series, which should be in 3 weeks from now, we'll be talking more about team building and what Pokemon we complement each other well, getting more into Excadrill, T-Tar, and the like.
Yeah, yeah, we talked a little bit about it today with like the Togekiss, Excadrill, Dragapult core that just like works
Mm-hmm.
so well together. But there's like a few additions to that and like ways to beat that, that I think are going to be really cool to talk about with team building. Stuff like Tyranitar, right? Which is so good against a lot of those Pokemon, like Tyranitar plus Intimidate, pretty good against like Excadrill, Togekiss, and Dragapult, right? Like pretty good, like Arcanine Tyranitar, for instance. That's like really a combination. Um, and there's a few like team building theories I also really want to get into in that episode that I'm going to be excited for. I don't want to spoil anything now. I don't want to get too into it now. I was about to get ahead of myself. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's going to be a fun one.
It definitely is. This series is going to be like it's already been fun, but it's going to continue to be fun, and there's so much to talk about. Like we haven't even scratched the surface of competitive Pokemon. If you
Yeah. Oh no.
are someone that's just now introduced to the scene with Sword and Shield and someone that looks forward to learning more about it, you can follow Last Thought Gaming. It's Last Thought Gaming on Facebook, at Last Thought Gaming on Twitter and Instagram. We have our own Discord. Our Twitter has a link to the link tree where you can find everything Last Thought Gaming online. Again, I am Moo. You can find me at Moo_SSB on Twitter, Instagram, and here on Twitch. Lou, where can people find you?
Pretty much on Twitter. That's where I'm at Lou21, 2U's. I'm also on Twitch. I've started streaming a lot. Not a lot, but streaming a lot more recently. I don't stream Pokemon stuff though. I stream poker mainly. Just because that's something that could also be its own episode, all right? Different or similarities between poker and Pokemon. That'd be really cool. Mainly just because that could help get into like the nitty gritty, like how game theory applies to Pokemon. I think that'd be that'd be a better title for that.
I want to have a general esports episode about poker and the overlaps between poker and esports because it overlaps with every single competitive game under the face of the sun. Poker is beautiful.
But yeah, real quick on Twitch, Lou21 again, this time with 4 U's, not 2. So we doubled the amount of U's.
We need to get you a consistent amount of U's.
Yeah, I know, across like all platforms. I don't know why I chose like double the amount of views on Twitch versus Twitter. I'm not quite sure at all, but that's how it is right now. We'll change it eventually.
Right, a quick rundown of content to expect on my Twitch channel because it's a little all over the place. Every Monday night we have another talk show, just a hangout thing called Moo's Monday Musings, where I have guests from all over Texas esports on, and we just talk about and play random games. Last week we had a TFT episode with Bobbles. That was kind of fun. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, there's tournaments that are yet unannounced that will be announced tomorrow on the LSG social media. Wednesday, I have to check my notes. Like I don't remember what I have on Wednesday. I have something every single day of the week. Tuesday, Wednesday are a tournament. Thursday is Why I Suck at Smash, where I get a top level player to come on and coach me, which is kind of funny because there's like no progress because I'm streaming other stuff every day of the week. That's Thursdays. Fridays is First Stock Fridays, which has been a hit so far. It's a series of first to 10 shell matches in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. The first series we had LSG Zai versus LSG Nico, had a 16 game series where both players played phenomenally well. This week we had Hugh versus Yellowrello, which was a phenomenal series, and you can find on our YouTube. And Saturdays we have another tournament that will be announced tomorrow. So there'll be 3 tournaments a week to look forward to on my Twitch channel for 3 different games. Fun stuff. And then Sundays, obviously, you can find us here on the LSG podcast where we talk about general esports, have a Pokemon series that Lou comes on for, and then we also have episodes that are Smash centric. So thank you all for tuning in, and hopefully I'll see you on one of those many nights, and we'll see you there. Thanks.